So what have I done in my 16 years of my career? So this is a brief summary of things that have happened. So very quickly, started in BR. Those of you remember what that was, I think it's been to be called Great British Railway now. So back in 91, I was brought on. My brother was a tamper operator at the time. Said, "Oh, my young brother here wants a career. Let's put him on." Spoke to the section manager, and I ended up as a trackman. Had no idea what I was doing. You know, before that, I'd been a salesman, I'd been a painter and decorator, I'd done various things. Come on, and thought, this is quite good. It's varied, outside, doing different stuff, nights, days, weekends. But my first, second and third shift were like really chucking me in. Went to Met Junction on a track renewal, 12-hour shifts, travelling to London, you know, picked up my pay slip at the end of the day and thought, oh, I like this. This is more than I've ever earned before. I might stick with this one. I developed through various roles, patrolman and bits and pieces like that, and in the end, become a section manager. Did that for 9 years, roughly, and I was a very quick get into a section manager, so much so that they went, oh, surely you can't know about railway. And I was given an assistant, a guy who come walk me, Peter to Butt. Anybody who's long-standing in railway might know him. And he walked with me and he passed me out as, yeah, I think he does know enough about the railway to be in charge. And then it sort of dawned on me, yes, I'm in charge. It's mine. And I haven't really moved from where I started as the trackman being told what to do to the bloke who tells everybody else what to do now. I've been around, I've come back, I'm now back as a TME on the section I started on. Which means I've had 35 years of looking after that bit of railway that I travel, my friends, my colleagues travel on, and I'm the sort of responsible person. I never thought when I started on the railway I'd be responsible for anything. I couldn't even tie my shoelaces virtually. So it was a real change. One of those changes was I was a section manager and somebody said, oh, you've got this engineer coming to look after you. And it was Neil Hobden, who now lives in Australia and runs the PWI down there and looks after their railways. And I thought, oh, that's a good job. Perhaps I might think about that one day. And sure enough, I did get a job as a track engineer, and I've been doing it since 2008. I went to Ashford, and now I come back to Tunbridge. So that's a brief summary of my career. So what have I learned? When I said I wanted to be a track engineer, this is what I thought a track engineer in my first career was. He was that bloke who turned up on site and just walked past you all and everybody said, he's the boss. You know, and you didn't really interact with that person. And probably that's what we all aspired to be, the person that everybody saw and respected. What it ended up being was sometimes you have to get your hands dirty, get involved, teach people, you know, everything you've learned from the bottom up, you know, even if you get a new starter, just teaching them how to use a shovel, because it's not easy. So I'm not in either of those two photographs, by the way. Right, so things that have changed all the time I've been a TME or as a section manager. Who remembers getting their traces and all their track quality data out of a dot matrix printer and tearing it off and running back to the office and looking at it and going, this is how I manage my track. Walking the track looking for red and yellow paint and taking a old box of floppy disks with you to take your site photographs, to put your renewal proposals in, and that was the sort of technology we were playing back with, and it was only like 25 years ago. It has changed a lot since. But the one thing that hasn't changed is getting out there, boots on ballast, walking your asset. That was the key fundamental bit of what you were doing. It was yours, you had to look at it, you had to do it. Then really the first major change that I saw, I used to walk in the office and the only thing I had was a A5 booklet, and that was my whole standard. Everything I needed to know to manage my asset was contained in that one book. I tried to find an old copy, I couldn't find one. Then we started bringing in patrolling diagrams to understand, give people more knowledge about where they're meant to walk, what they're meant to inspect, and that's most of our changes are based on something happening somewhere. We started using U2U data more. Somebody come in my office one day and says, oh, this is a GPS. They're going to go out and find your defect rails based on the information come off a train. And then it was somebody said, oh, and your level 2s, give them this GPS, they'll find their level 2s because we don't spray anything anymore. And it was like, all of a sudden, things started altering. And then we started doing bow ties. I got involved with bow ties and sat in a room once a week for about 6 months discussing risk. And I thought, oh, I like this. I'm understanding not why it's broken, but how we prevent it, all the assessments we do beforehand, all the inspections and why we do them. I learned a lot about managing my infrastructure and looking at the risk before it became the risk. We did a bit of P2F curves when we brought in risk-based maintenance, and that was another way. It was development of the role. We started using monitoring trains a lot more. PLPR come in. We did Appendix A, and then we did Appendix A+. So we were learning about what we were doing and walking the track weekly as a patrolman. What do they gain out of it? What does a section manager gain out of it? If you're not gaining anything, why are you doing it? And we brought different methods in. Then, you know, mobile flashback welders. I had a flashback welder I brought over from Germany about 25 years ago when I rerolled a tunnel. Massive, great 40-foot lorry, turned up with a flashback welding rig on the back. Brilliant. And then I do another re-rail job some years later, and we've got mobile ones, you know, really quick, really easy. So we have brought in so much over the years. Some of it's worked, some of it not so much. But, you know, you've got to find the right uses for things. Counters, brilliant. It's what we should have. Didn't quite work for us in Kent, but it does work elsewhere. Stressing kits, you know, it's still a stressing kit at the end of the day, and we're still doing the same job as we did. And lookouts, and then no lookouts. That was probably the biggest step change as an engineer I've ever seen. All these other changes to standards, to ways of working, to how we react to situations didn't affect me very much. It was just the process change. This was a fundamental change to my career, because in one day it stopped me going, I've got a fault I need to go and look at. I can't go and do that today because I've got to plan it. I've got to be more effective in my time. I see that as our biggest change. We're still learning from it, the fallout from it, and how to do things different. So bits and pieces I've learnt. Know your patch. It takes a long time to learn your patch. You're not learning it as it is now. You've got to learn it as it was, everything that's happened previous to it, because it comes and it's static. The railway doesn't change until it changes, and you can't know when that's going to happen. So you've got to understand. You learn from the old boys you worked with. You look at them and you go, he's talking a load of nonsense here. That won't happen again. And then you're walking down the track one day and you go, I've got a bank slip. I've got this. Oh, he told me about this. 1960 this happened last. That type of knowledge and history helps you manage your asset going forward. If it needs fixing, get it done. You know, it is your problem, okay, section manager, the team out there, but they sometimes just need to be told, go and do it. The excuse of we can't get access, we can't get the staff, sometimes just tell them, go and do it. People. Yeah, the hardest part about managing a railway is managing the people. I've learned that a long time ago. Some people you can manage really easy, and you just say, Fred, go and do what I want you to do. And he's off and he does it. And other people you have to think how to coax them to get the best out of them. But you need to know their limitations, because some people are so committed, they will just go and do everything for you, and they can be your biggest risk because they want to impress. Strong and determined goes back to, am I a poodle or a terrier? Depends how you take me, you know. If you're giving me what I want, yeah, I'll bite your hand off. It's great, yeah, because I want what you're giving me. But if you're not giving it to me, I'll battle forever. But you don't have to do it on your own. You know, you've got a lot of team around you. A problem shared, you know, is still your problem. but you've let them know. And sometimes just letting other people know gets some of that weight away from your shoulders. Knowledge. There is so much knowledge out there at the moment. Utilise what you know, utilise what you can get out of technology, but go in and see it. And so the old thing about walking the ballast comes back to itself. If you've got a system that's showing you where all your defects are, sometimes it's quite difficult to find it in amongst the data we've got now, the vast quantities of data, and sometimes you just have to go and have a look. Like that, you know. So other things, when it happens, because it does happen, it doesn't matter how much you look after your asset, and, you know, a train derailing on a set of switches, I couldn't have prevented that. I couldn't have prevented the bank slip, but how you recover from those problems and what you can offer to your team in support makes quite a bit of difference. And the other bit I put on here was, you've always got the millionaire option, which is phone a friend. There's a lot of us in this room, and if you phoned anybody up who was here today, they would offer you advice. They would offer you a solution. You know, it's not their problem, but they would certainly help you solve it. I think for once, I'm going to finish early, which is very unusual because I normally talk the Highlands of a donkey. And Richard thought I'd be up here all day, didn't you? So with that, oh no, I did put another one in. Yeah, I did. So that's why. Other things I've learned. I put this out of order. That's why. Should have checked. Other things learned. SMD. I never thought as an engineer I'd be worried about the weather, other than, you know, buckles. Not SMD. That was a big learning curve we all had to learn, especially in Kent. Why is my bank being affected because it's dry? That really was something of a moment for us in Kent, that somebody realised that weather actually affected track quality, and it had never really been discussed or thought of before. And then we had to learn about cutting down trees, which was, thank God we got off-track engineers now, especially in Kent, because the first time we were going to cut loads of trees down, oh boy, did we have some complaints. And, you know, I don't want to do that anymore because... So that's me done. So over to the new trick. I was going to chuck him a ball and see if he caught it, but I didn't bring a ball with me. So Paddy.
Thank you, Paul. Right. Okay, I'll try and keep it brief because who would have thought that Paul would have overrun? Yes. Well, so it might surprise some of you in this room that actually I started on the railway not long after Paul. That's me in '97, 6 years after Paul started. I thought I'd get a bit of payback on Paul for roping me into this presentation by making you feel a bit old there. But everything that we're doing nowadays as TMEs and ATMEs and sort of engineers in this room comes from standing on the shoulders of railway giants such as Paul. But we've been asked to operate in a very different and difficult context. So, you know, limited access, less resource, aging asset, constant financial constraints. That's all the stuff that we've been asked to talk about today. And, you know, how do we solve this? People at the top of the business, lots of people love just saying new technology will solve all of our problems, but what does that actually mean, and how do we actually implement it? It's a nice buzzword, but in a maintenance context, you know, where it's really difficult to implement change, what do we do? So I thought I'd like put up on the screen some of the systems that we're supposed to all be using going forward. So got these, don't forget these ones as well. definitely these ones, these new ones as well, and about 500,000 different Power BI dashboards now. And so, like, all of these tech improvements and new tools since Paul started, but does it actually feel most of the time like our lives are getting easier? I'd say sometimes it can feel as a TME a bit suffocating, like a bit of a catch-22 as an engineer with the volume of data. So, if something does go wrong, there's always Captain Hindsight can come and look at something in the background and say, haha, you missed this. When actually, like, you struggle because everything just ends up being an information overload. So, we're moving from a world of not enough data to a world of too much data and not enough time. So how do we address this? So the first thing is around making the data work for us rather than everyone in this room having to spend hours trawling through different systems and different data just to try and find the sort of nugget of insight that we need. So that means sort of simpler, smarter data systems that, like everyone's been talking about here, flags the risk to us, and maybe eventually we'll get to the utopia of preventative maintenance that we all want. So I thought I'd just show a couple examples of how where some of that stuff's worked for me. So this was a pesky repeat twist we had on the Hayes branch. My team went and kept going and lift and packing a nearby IBJ, which they thought was a problem. When I looked in Insight, it linked the PLPR voiding defect to it. So I could see that photo, which showed sort of an abnormality on the railhead. So then when I went to site and had a look at it, see on the left there was a wheel burn that had worn down over the years, and just the voiding kept coming back. It kept wearing down with localized voiding there. And when we actually re-railed that, the state of the foot, we were very lucky to avoid a break there. What else? Yeah, so recently we've been using, with Mr. Attenborough, the Abtus laser profile gauge for switch assessment. So this is all about improving our inspection accuracy and quality. So this was a band facing moves at the original inspection, and usually first response would have been, well, all right, we need to go out there and get it ground. But when we used the Abtus gauge on it, it actually confirmed that the switch profiles were good throughout. And the main outstanding issue was actually the RSO through the planing length of the switch, which my S&T colleagues were replacing the tube, upgrading to tubular stretchers through there to try and resolve that last night. So yeah, again, rather than taking asset out of the switch, we found the actual root cause. Yeah, so you can see all the profiles there on site, and then also that's back in the office. You can scan through and it gives you all that really accurate info to help with your planning. This was a lovely rail break I had in Blackheath Tunnel. It's a gorgeous wet tunnel that rains 365 days a year. So we have quite a lot of corrosion issues in there. But the break was a combination of localized head loss and voiding, which then was exacerbated by a pit underneath the rail. So what I did after that was used the rail depth viewer system, which we have a sort of a Power BI which ingests it, and I could scroll through the whole tunnels, just over a mile long, and find all of my localized head loss sites, which I then went out, scoped up, and can build a proactive re-railing job bank from. But all this good stuff doesn't work if it's just us in this room doing it, as intelligent as everyone in this room is, as Richard's words. It's not going to work if it's just us doing it. We don't have the capacity ourselves. We need to get our teams on the ground and the people above us, or in different elements of the organisation, to help us out. And how do we upskill our frontline teams? A lot of our maintenance teams don't come from a background in working with data or data management, and their first response is quite often, well, it's not for me. So I thought I'd just share a few examples where I've had some success in selling the benefits to my team. So it can be as simple as remote scoping. So this was a full set that we measured up over a year ago, and it had a couple closures and twist rails off the fronts. My SM was leading the installation on the Saturday night, but he hadn't actually managed to make it out to site to scope it himself yet. So on the Friday, he was sort of a bit concerned about where the twist rail locations were and everything, and just using this, in 5 minutes, I gave him that. You can see all of your bond hole locations, where your existing bolt holes are, where your welds need to go, where your twist rails are. It meant he had that in his head, ready to go on the Saturday night. Could see everything that he needed to do. Other thing that I found that teams really like is being able to show them the effectiveness of repairs. So this was using the Connex system. This was a crossing which we had repeat voiding issues on. and a few defects. So you can see we tried lift and packing it to start with, didn't really work over on the left-hand side of the screen, didn't have much impact. Then we did a weld repair, built up the wheel transfer area, that reduced the acceleration and the displacement forces quite a bit, and then lift and packed it after doing that weld repair, and that had a really good impact. Yes, and then if you obviously deteriorated again a bit gradually over time, but by that point we'd managed to plan in to renew the crossing, which again reduced acceleration, tamped it afterwards, and now it's good as gold. So people like being able to see that kind of information and feedback on the work that they're doing, particularly like the welders. They love seeing the impact on that they're having. And yeah, it could be as simple as, you know, trace on trace reviews and insight as well. So, you know, just being able to show my team the effectiveness of a Hallard alignment scheme that they've done using the system as easily as that, you know, that really gets their buy-in into being able to sort of see and use these systems. And yeah, lastly, yeah, everyone loves getting a P1 suspect report from the UTU, which always seems to happen to me on a Friday afternoon. But nowadays, my team can view that. You can view the B scan in the Power Apps, the suspect system, and where you've got cameras fitted to the UTU, they upload the footage to AIVR within a couple of hours. So it means that you can actually immediately, my team can actually immediately see what the risk is that they're going into. And, you know, sometimes it's flagged that, oh, there's a new temporary joint that's been put in there. It's almost certainly going to be that. So all this stuff just gives people better ideas of the risk. And yeah, so it's really easy to get into the mindset of, oh, you know, the railway's the railway, nothing ever changes, except as Paul has said, so much has changed. You know, and there's so much new stuff in the pipeline, whether it's, you know, AI detection of wet beds, ballast levels, seasonal IBJ inspections, lubrication effectiveness, railhead contamination, all of this new stuff coming in the pipeline. There's so much change. And so, you know, this is not saying that technology is king and we never need to go out on track again, because like, as Paul said, there's no substitute sometimes for setting your eyes on a problem and kicking a few bolts. And in another 30 years' time, sort of, who knows what railways and maintenance processes will look like. But if we don't engage with the changes and the new technology and challenge our teams and everyone around us to help us in that, then we'll fail, in my opinion. But what do I know? Maybe in 30 years' time, I'll be out of the job and replaced by AI anyway. So might as well have fun while it lasts. Anyway, thank you.